Thank you for coming today. My name is Craig Joseph. I'm the channel account manager for Carbonite Webroot. So you'll see a lot of different things in the slide deck that correspond with both of them. Carbonite is a data protection platform that was built many years ago, 2005 to be exact. And we now have acquired Webroot as of last year. But unfortunately, throughout the year of 2019, we really didn't have a clear idea of how to go to market with both companies. So we kind of had people looking at us and saying, you guys are data protection. You guys have been the ones that were protecting mom and pop shop laptops and PCs for years and years. And yes, that's what we're known for. But we've also supported the enterprise business, the SMB business, and we've been there for many years. We're not a best of breed partner that comes and goes or a best of breed company that does one thing specifically right. We've just been here to support the market as long as we've been here. And we're expanding that year over year. And today, my focus is going to be on cyber resilience. Since the companies of Carbonite and Webroot came together, our big initiative that came through this year was cyber resiliency and what that is. Not data protection, not endpoint protection, but cyber resiliency. And as I go through my slides today, you'll eventually, hopefully, if I'm good enough to explain things to you guys, you'll understand what cyber resiliency as a whole means. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start off with a story really quickly for you guys to get you kind of rolling. And then I'll introduce Brent, who I should have done already. I apologize, Brent. So I'm at a conference a couple weeks ago, and I'm sitting at a conference table, big round table, and I got my buddy sitting next to me, my partner in crime, and he's got his phone on the table, and his phone's scrolling, and he's got text messages coming through over and over again. And I'm like, what's going on over there on your table? What's going on? Everything okay? And he's like, my wife, something happened. I'm like, well, what happened? He goes, well, she's got a small business, and she's got a MacBook, and something happened. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we work for Webroot and Carbonite. Just go ahead and fix it. Yeah, but what ended up happening was she didn't have our Webroot. She didn't install it like I told her to. So what ended up happening was they got into her computer and they took over. And they were throwing up message on her screen that said, hey, you know what? You need to pay us and we'll recover it back. So Brent had to walk out of the room. Sorry, I just throw you under the bus. And he had to give her a call and say, hey, you know what? Go ahead and back up your computer. Go ahead and revert it back with Endpoint. So she didn't really understand how to do that, and she ended up going through different steps with another company on her computer that were telling her you need to remove your software, you need to remove the software. So what that did was two different things. It kind of violated this person. It violated her because it took her freedoms away and her computer away from her, and it made the vulnerabilities of her computer really shine in her eyes and say, wow, I should have had my protection, but I can roll it back. So what that proves is Webroot has a 99.4% resilience rate. Nobody's going to get in there. We've got, as you will find out, we've got real-time threat detection, and we have many different ways of protecting it. But we also have Endpoint, which would back up that whole entire device. So if something happens, it's okay. We'll just roll it back to a place where, a state and time where everything was okay, and you'll be happy. But nothing really sets the standard when somebody gets into your computer, takes your data, and just holds it over your head. If you've got a cyber resilience story with both protection on the front end for your 99.4% protection and a back end where if somebody just happens to get in there, you can back it up anyway and recover back to a safe spot, it feels really good. So as I explained, Carbonite is a leader in data protection. Been around for a long time, 2005, got about 1,500 employees. Worldwide headquarters is in Boston. But one of the things I want to point out is our 90% satisfaction rate. We've got a great TAC team that's worldwide. You can get on the phone, you can call them anytime, and they'll get you to somebody who's a rocket science in what he's trying to do. And our partner community is huge. We're here with Accent Imaging, and they've been nice enough to have us come in the building and talk to you guys. And that's how we go to market. We're not going to send you emails in your inbox, and we're not going to try to bother you and pester you and scare you in regards to your data protection and why you need to do it. We work with these guys. These guys will be able to explain the story and tell you guys and give us experiences like this so we can talk about what it is to be a part of the Carbonite story. I'm going to introduce Brent Flam because Brent has been around with Carbonite much longer than me, and I like his story when it comes to where we've come from. So Brent,
So it's kind of hard to read the screen from the back, but one of the things that's been interesting with Carbonite is we started in the personal consumer space, protecting individual laptops. How many of you guys are familiar with the Carbonite name? Just out of curiosity. Yeah, so it's really how we've marketed it. You know, it's the design was always to make sure that whether it was your business computers, well, specifically it was targeted for your consumers, right? So wanted to make sure that your personal computers, that your parents or your grandparents, you know, personal documents were going to be protected. Because guess what? There are lots of harmful viruses and nasty things out there, but there's also lots of accidents that happen, right? Accidentally deleting a file. Where did I put this? I thought I saved this in a certain place and I don't know where it is now. And so that's where Carbonite really started, was with that consumer market. But as we grew and as we proved ourselves, we then had people say, well, I want this at work too. Now, Carbonite was able to scale somewhat to those requests, but initially they had to build their systems to cater to that. And eventually it got so big and the demand grew so great that they couldn't satisfy those needs by themselves. So they actually started acquiring technology. They either had to develop it on their own or simply look for opportunities to combine technologies. And that's the direction they went. So you can see in 2011, they actually went public with an IPO and then started acquiring businesses 2012, 2013. I actually came on board here in 2016. I came from a company called eVault. eVault is server backup that dates back to about 1997. So it's been around a long time. Server backup, it scales across almost every platform. So just about regardless of whatever operating system you're using, this technology can back it up. And it can back it up to whatever location you want. So the original Carbonite consumer product was designed to go to the Carbonite cloud, but sometimes as a business you don't always want it to go to a customers, to a public cloud or a company's cloud. You want to keep it on your own hardware. Maybe you already have your own cloud set up. So it gave us that flexibility, right, to deploy really where and how and when we needed to. Again, focused on backing up the data in a way that our customers could recover it within the timeframes they need. So there's some data that you need back in 48 hours and you're fine. There's some servers, if they go down or if data is deleted, you need it back right away. So that's kind of the direction the company started going. In 2017, they took it the next step. They acquired a company called DoubleTake, which is replication and failover, immediate failover. In the case of a server that goes down, we can immediately fail over to a replicated server to a destination target. And we have companies, for example, just about every major airline uses the DoubleTake software, because if an airline's primary servers go down, they can't push out from the gate. They need that high availability. And then we acquired Data Castle, which even further expands our ability to protect endpoints. Then we acquired Mozy. Is Mozy a familiar name to any of you guys? Yeah, I see some head nods. Mozy was big, and that's been a really fun acquisition. And then our latest acquisition was Webroot, the security piece, just last year. So now that really the picture that we're painting with the cyber resiliency is, like Craig said, the front-end protection against intrusions, the back-end protection against possible intrusions that do break through, but also user error and hardware failure, being able to recover in the times that we need. Anyway, do you want to go from there? Do you want me to?
Does anybody remember where Brent came from? All right. Just making sure you guys listen. So as we explained, the Webroot and Carbonite side, cyber resiliency made easy. And each one of these little bubbles here represents one of those companies that Brent just introduced. So the Mozy side of things, or the mail store, or the Data Castle. So, and I'll explain in another few slides here what each one of these things can do as well. Right now, 21 million customers, 36,000 partners. That's huge, but that's not really the real story here today. I want to make sure that you guys understand that we're not just two different companies, even though we're kind of marketed that way. We are one cohesive unit. So on the side, you'll see users and network and devices, and you'll see us in the bottom as Carbonite. What we're usually done is we're the kind of the last ditch effort. We're the ones that are always protecting on the back end, but we're the ones that are usually the unsung heroes. And Webroot is the one that's kind of winning all the awards right now. We're the #1 PC endpoint protection right now in the industry with PC Magazine and a whole bunch of others down the gambit, CNET, things like that. And they're the ones that usually, if you buy a laptop at Best Buy, you're usually going to get Webroot on it. So Webroot, what makes Webroot special? What makes it better than the others? So the way it was explained to me is that we have more data than everybody else does. And the way we can do that is we work with Amazon Web Services. We work with Cassandra, Hadoop, and all these other different companies to pull data from different sides of the business. And understanding that data by utilizing an API called Unity. And Unity allows us to push all of our data out that we have and cohesively share with a reciprocal relationship with some of these big database companies. And what ends up happening is if, let's say, years ago, if somebody were to get a virus, you had to wait until somebody were to go ahead and press the button, or you had an auto update that would go ahead and provision and bring down the new license and say, these are the new things that you're protecting. With us, if somebody in the world gets hacked, within 5 minutes, we will make sure you will never get hacked by the same exact thing. And that's our real-time replication, or real-time protection with Webroot. Any questions on that? Okay. With the business side of the protection, we have the protection and detection side of the business. We've got the simplified security management, integrate, support, and remediation. What that means is we can go in and we can actually scan the computer, but we don't have to scan it file by file. So you'll see a lot of scanners that'll do a full scan or a smart scan. What we can do is we can go in and we scan it the first time we're installed, and we see all the files and see what everything does and how everything's placed. And then we leave it alone. We don't take 3 to 5% of your system's resources and sit there and constantly spin it and look at every file. If a change is made on your hard drive or within your network, we look at it and we make sure that it is the file that it needs to be. And what that does is it cuts down to be a less than 1% resource to the point where you don't even really see it. There are times when I have to go on my desktop and I have to look for the logo, or I have to go into my task manager and make sure it's even running anymore. That is what you want, because I've come from other companies where if I go in the background, I wonder why my video game is running slow today. I'm wondering why my Chrome browser is running slow today. Well, that's because they're probably taking 10 to 15% of my resources doing a full system scan, when all we really need to do is look at what's changed in the last 24 hours. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, I was going to throw something in. I didn't know Webroot did that. That's pretty slick. In other words, yeah, so if any computer in the world gets hacked, that Webroot, we use it here internally.
Mm-hmm.
That's really pretty slick. So then it's just communicated and spread out all over the world. Hey, block this and it's done. And it is a very low resource, like Semantic and McAfee and those used to chew up your resources. And you had to wait for definition deck to download before you're protected against the most recent virus. Yeah, it's, anyway, I'm sorry. It's very interesting.
Is it pricing? Is that like per user or per device, or how do you handle that?
It can be handled by per user. It could be handled by device. How much data is within that user? The organization can purchase it annually, monthly. It just depends. We have many different ways we can approach the market too. Yeah. And if you're interested, thank you for. This is Webroot security for yourself. So that'll be there for a year for you to protect your devices on a personal level.
So kind of what you were saying, Mike, we've got 67 million, we're loaded on 67 million machines right now. We actually call those sensors because they're active and live all the time. And whenever they have connectivity, they communicate with our cloud platform. And as soon as there's a questionable file that's opened, and maybe you'll get to it, I'm probably stepping ahead. We actually monitor that file. If we don't know if it's bad or not, if we don't know if it's bad or good, we'll monitor it. Instead of just giving you a false positive or a false negative, which gets people to turn off antivirus, right? So we'll monitor it and log every single action that file takes. And if it's deemed to be harmful, we then have the ability to roll back all of those actions and then report it back to our cloud platform, which then identifies it as hostile. And so that's where that whole 5 minute, if once it's detected and determined this is a new attack or new program, it now is something that every single one of our users, every 67 million users, has access to know that it's
I have a
harmful.
question on that. So what you just said is, in other words, let's say it is some virus, malware, whatever.
Mhm.
So the Webroot has the ability to roll back whatever changes it made to the system. So it's
Yep. Because it's all
so
it's all
ultimate
logged.
protection then.
Does that introduce a lot of overhead?
No, because we normally identify it fairly quickly.
Yeah, you'll that.
But
Yeah,
as far as, so are you constantly monitoring the state of every file?
No.
Just the changes when things are opened, right? So when new files are opened, it's you won't even notice that it's running. So
Right.
that's why I say try it out. That trial will give you either a year of personal use, or I think it's a month of business use.
I'll definitely try it out.
Yeah.
I'm real interested.
I
So it
didn't
rolls
realize
back any changes that were made.
Yeah. So if it goes in and make changes to the registry or things like that, right? It'll go in and roll those back.
But only to the changes that were made.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty slick. That's another. See, I'm yeah, that's again, we use it here, but didn't know that in depth. I mean, 5 minutes and then they're saying, so your system's protected. I'll put you back the way you are, and then we shoot out to the cloud and say, hey, this file's bad, and 67 million people or devices now are protected as long as they're connected.
Right.
It's pretty slick. Hey, I'll take one.
So actually, I wish Steve was in the room because he could take a look at this slide and we can kind of let him know that it's kind of similar to their wheel,
yeah.
their wheel that you guys showed.
Yeah.
So
Very much is.
we utilize the wheel to kind of present exactly how we utilize it. So it's the predict, the protect, the detect, and the remediate. I'm not going to stick on that. We have Webroot DNS. In layman's terms, what this pretty much does, as you guys probably know in the IT community, is it lets you go in and prevent people from going to different websites. So if you have a network where you don't want somebody to go to Google, you can literally turn that off in that domain. If you don't want somebody to go to Amazon.com, you can turn that off. And I think this is a well-used tool in certain government agencies or school, different agencies that you don't want people to go into, and that's kind of the first level of prevention. When you're sitting there and you're going to a different website where you know that there may or may not be some kind of an issue, it's a good way to stop it at the door with DNS protection.
Is this just on an enterprise solution, or is it on a home user also?
Oh, both. So you can do actually all three. So you can do the SMB market, and you can do the enterprise market, or you can do the personal home.
Another piece of this is a lot of times one of the biggest threats right now is phishing attacks, right? So we actually mapped out, and we've been mapping out the internet and URLs and IP addresses for, since we've been around, since the late 90s. So we know that if someone clicks on a link that we've tagged as dangerous or malicious, that's where the DNS filtering will also come in and prevent that. Now, one of the things that will happen is these hackers, they'll have rotating URLs. So you click on a phishing link, and 15 minutes later, it's going to redirect you somewhere else. So it's a constant update, constant struggle to maintain that. But we actually maintain from what I'm told, we're maintain the largest database in the world. So, for example, like Cisco Umbrella, they buy the database from us. We actually sell our database to our competitors because we have it mapped out so well.
And the reason why things are needed like this is because a lot of the viruses and malware nowadays are polymorphic. So if, let's say, you were to get a virus on your computer, and let's say you were to get a virus on the computer, it's not going to be the same exact virus. It's going to change as it jumps between computer to computer, device to device. And we were kind of joking about this earlier with Steve. We were talking about the fact that IoT devices are in your home. Imagine if you had 50 light bulbs in your home like I do, and I happen to have DNS protection and Webroot on my network. But if somebody were to get access to my light bulb, they could bounce between light bulb to light bulb, and it could polymorph, and it could end up, making big issues for my IoT network. And that could eventually take over my IoT network and turn it into a DDoS attack. And that DDoS attack could eventually take down a network that's in the same city or down the street from me, just because it's built up a collection of 100 IoT devices because I'm weird and I have an IoT home. So, yeah. Security awareness training is something we do too. So when people usually look at this, they're like, wait, you guys do security awareness training? Well, why? Why don't you guys just utilize your software? Well, as humans, we do things, and the first line of defense is actually us, making sure that we're not clicking on the wrong links, making sure we're not opening the wrong email links. And in fact, being a Carbonite Webroot employee myself, I'm constantly put at the test of our security awareness training. So when I wake up in the morning, I check my emails, I have to kind of look and squint and make sure that I'm not opening the wrong thing, because they're constantly making sure that I know what I'm doing and make sure I'm not clicking a phishing attack. And this, we can go through and we can have a talk with some of your organization via webinar. We can come in and talk to you guys just like we are now, but with your own organizations, and bring an awareness to security so we can stop it at the door. Don't click it and it won't become a problem. And this is a deck that proves that everything that we were talking about here is put into one particular platform. It's our Unity API. Just like Brent was saying, we utilize that with other competitors as well as ourselves, because it's better to work together to understand what they're seeing and what we're seeing, as opposed to competing with each other and only being able to handle 60 to 70% of the network. And this is our management console. Within the next 3 to 6 months, our roadmap is to have our Carbonite and our Webroot managed consoles in the same platform. So you'll be able to control everything from your endpoints to your data protections within the same platform in console. Any questions?
But currently they're separate. Carbonite, your backup,
Mm-hmm.
data recovery's on one console, and
Mhm.
Webroot's
Exactly.
So would Webroot be a add-on to your current antivirus or replacement?
So we can be. So that's a great question, actually. Yeah. Thank you for that. So Webroot can coexist with Norton, with McAfee, and you would think that they would battle each other like it traditionally does. If you traditionally put a Norton antivirus on with a McAfee, they're going to battle each other out, and they're going to compete for permissions, and it's going to be a mess on your computer the entire time. What we do is we kind of take a step back, and we can be installed collaboratively with any of the other softwares like the Sophoses of the world, and we take a step back and we say, okay, we'll let you guys handle on the front end. So what's going to happen is they're going to run all of their different permissions, and they're going to try to understand what's changed on the network. But if we tend to notice that they've run multiple tests on some of the changes that I've made, and we feel like there's still a threat there, we will step in and we will make the change, and we will support the network, but we will never be disruptive. So to answer your question shortly, yes, we can.
Currently, do any of the other softwares do what yours does? In other words, if you're attacked and it starts to mess with the registry, unravel that. I mean, Symantec or McAfee don't do they?
I know we definitely have some competitors in the market. The thing that's interesting is there's a few that have kind of branded this whole cloud AI, and they took a different marketing approach. And my product managers looked at a lot of the marketing that some of these other companies are using and went, well, that's what we do. We've been doing it longer. But yet, so there are other companies that do this. Absolutely.
No, so there is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're
still
not
not.
entirely unique in the market. We just feel like we do it better, and we feel like we've done it longer. And really what it comes down to is what are those databases? One, how big is your map of the internet? So that determines how well we can protect. And then also how responsive are we? And then how many sensors are out there gathering that data?
And how many actual end users?
Yeah, I can't speak. I don't know specifically if McAfee or Norton use it. I think they're actually a little bit more of the older school, but I know they're really trying to
I would
get
think
on
so.
board.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think all of them will be doing this now.
Well, to add to that, what they call that is next gen threat detection. And we're actually the first company that does next gen threat detection. So what ends up happening is if everybody's doing it, people tend to notice the latest one that's doing it because they're the ones with the big rah-rah and the marketing campaigns. But we've actually been the original pioneers of it in the first place. We're just constantly ignored because we were the first out of the 10 that do it now.
Right. And then old school names like McAfee and they go back.
Absolutely carry weight.
They carry weight. I mean, you're talking years and years and years. 10,
Well-
20,
The other difference too is our go-to-market, right? So Webroot has always been very, very committed to distributing through resellers, right? And not necessarily, we're not going to have a Super Bowl commercial. It's the way we go to market is much different than some of these other companies. So like we mentioned, Best Buy, if you go to Best Buy and you have, the Geek Squad work on your computer, you're probably going to get Webroot. I think there's one other that they go to, but it's more the old school, like I want to say Trend Micro maybe.
Yeah, Trend's another big one.
Yeah, but they use the old approach where it's a library of viruses that has to be updated on a regular basis. So they've really gone over our direction. So our go-to-market's been a little bit different.
You're not gonna have a PC-Matic commercial. Isn't that a commercial, the big PC-Matic and
Oh yeah. Generally, that's not how they've done it.
right, yeah.
Right.
But I'm from Houston, and we just recently got a huge billboard for Carbonite on the side of the freeway. So I'm extremely excited about that, being from Houston. So, yeah. So Brent is our distribution manager, but Brent was previously an account manager. So, Brent, I want you to come up here and talk about Carbonite overview. Just slide. You're ready to go to the next slide.
So, any more questions before we move on from the Webroot side, the antivirus, the DNS filtering, the security awareness?
Webroot, what types of cloud protection are there? Do you support APIs? Do you have add-ins for third-party clouds, Microsoft 365 or Citrix files or anything like that?
I don't know how that all
Does the
plays in, do you?
protection take place when the user is at their computer and they click on a link in their browser?
So that's the better answer. So we may need to get an engineer to really I don't know that I understand fully your question, but everything does take place on the endpoint itself. So one of the things that's nice about this is, let's say, for example, remote employees like us, when we're out traveling and we have, the DNS filtering and all of the Webroot tools on our laptops, that DNS filtering goes with me. I don't have to be on the network for that to protect me, if that makes sense. So maybe that partially.
Devices, or is that supported?
Historically, I think we can push some stuff out to mobile devices, but historically we haven't. It really is more a focus on laptops. Is that?
Well, we do have a mobile platform, but it's more there to protect your files as a file as opposed to your operating system. So if you've got files on that you're trying to protect or you're trying to collaborate with a group, they'll make sure those files are there regardless of what happens on your computer, and it'll be in the cloud and protected.
Yeah, it was more the files and the DNS click protection that
Mm-hmm.
would be a concern for us.
Well, I'm going to take it down as a need to know more.
It actually might be the quick cache. So in regards to Webroot, some of the other things that it does, and I'm not sure if my slide deck went through that, but it's quick cache. So if you're on a plane and you're clicking through some of your files and you had downloaded an exe file previous to getting on that plane and getting offline, if you click it, it'll allow it to run. You still have your profiles that say, hey, this is a bad file, and it'll stop it. But let's say there's a situation where you open it up and it didn't quite know. It'll cache back what you did in those changes, and right when you get back online, it'll take a look at it with a threat monitor, and it'll say, oh, no. And it'll back it up or it'll recover it back. So
it does lead a little bit into the next conversation, which is Office 365 and cloud, right? So, a lot of people think that when they have data when they make that move over to Microsoft, they think that, somehow these things are being backed up. And there is limited backup, right? So just the standard default is 30 days. You can go back and recover files. Unfortunately, it's a destructive restoration. So if you've got, if you're working on a file, 3 weeks down the road, you've made a lot of progress on it, but you realize that you need to go back and recover from a previous point. You're gonna have to make some changes with that file, save it as a new name or whatever else. Otherwise, when you do the recovery, it's going to rewrite over it. Well, thus we have the ability to not do that. But really the whole point is, especially when it comes to compliance concerns, 30 days isn't enough. We need to have something that's a little bit more robust. So I'm a little concerned about time, so we'll kind of skip through some of this really quickly. But this kind of details some of your responsibilities versus what Microsoft says they'll do. So I would say if you're with O365, take a look at what their commitment is, and if you have gaps in what you need versus what they provide, we need to take a look at that. We can provide and the way we do our backup for Office 365 is we don't just protect the files. We can protect everything that's native to Microsoft. So Teams is big, SharePoint, all of your emails, everything, and we can save it. We can do our standard retention is a year. You can kick that out to 7 years if you need to keep all of that data as long as you need.
Does anybody here use Office 365 or Teams? No? Oh yeah? Okay, there's a few of them. So let's say somebody leaves your company and they were the leader of your collaborative team and they just, their account was deleted. Does the team goes with it? That data's just gone, right? Do you have a way to bring it back up?
Well, team user is separate from any other user.
But if that team user was the leader of that team and the builder, and he actually had access to the files as the permissions and with the collaborative files that were in there,
The site and team is still there, and you can assign new,
Just
Yeah, you won't lose the team
Yeah.
information.
so the content's still there, you just have to assign a new.
so if that person was leaving the company and they left they deleted the team before they left, would you be able to get that data back?
There's like a grace period for deleted content in SharePoint and Teams.
Mm-hmm.
And now it'd have to be somebody that had your admin. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't let a common user doesn't have admin privileges
Yeah, the
to do
Teams
that.
managers don't have the ability, in our organization, we don't give them the
Yeah,
ability to
right.
delete a team,
Okay.
so. But
Okay.
there is a small grace period, I think it's like 30 days or something
It's
like
not very
that.
Yeah.
long. It's certainly, but I'll be honest. There's so much to Office 365, and I'm still pulling it
Oh,
together.
every day there's something new.
Right.
I think even on the Exchange service side, if you delete somebody's email address, if they leave the company, you can recover that data for about another 30 days.
Yep. Yep. But it's not a long term. It is not a
No,
long
it's
term.
not.
Yeah. And so what we
Clock's
find is a lot of times from a compliance standpoint, it just doesn't meet the same requirements or same compliance requirements that historically hosting your own Exchange server you were able to do. So we need a way to be able to back that up. So we actually one of the things that's unique with us, or I should say differentiator, is we not only back up all of the basically everything native to Microsoft, but we actually back it up in our own instance of Microsoft or O365. So you don't have to worry about those in and out charges. You don't have to worry about downloading everything to your own server and keeping it in your own environment. Everything stays in the cloud, where you wanted it. It's just on a different platform, and then you're able to access it. Super easy to deploy. It can be billed, because that was a question that came up earlier. It can be billed per user on an unlimited basis, so unlimited capacity, or we can go capacity based, depending on your needs. And
I work with a lot of small businesses, so they're very cost conscious.
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, right. So now the next part that we'll step into is just our server backup. And so with, basically the way it works, it's threefold. We have the Carbonite Portal, which is the management tool, right? So whether you're managing it for your customers or whether you're managing it for yourself, you go in to the management portal, the Carbonite Portal, and you can access it from any browser. So we've had customers that have told us that from a flight, from Wi-Fi, they've been able to actually go in and monitor their portal. You could even perform recoveries, right? Just as long as you've got an internet connection and a cell phone, you can go in and monitor and perform recoveries if as needed. You can also, and I mean, everything's kind of handled from that Carbonite Portal. But we are an agent-based backup. And so what we do is we put an agent on each of your servers to be protected. Whether that's a physical server or a virtual, really doesn't matter. Our virtual agents have a little bit different capabilities like rapid restore, rapid recovery, things like that, where you can quickly get a server back up and running. We have similar tools for physical. It may not be as rapid, but it's still very, very quick. And we can do, that agent is going to do all of the work. So it's going to do all an upfront encryption, compression, and deduplication. So we encrypt the data right at the source before it ever hits the NIC card, before it ever moves. We then push that back up to wherever you want to back it up to. Now, in most cases, we recommend having a local backup server, and this helps from two ways. One, if you're backing it up to a local server, your backup windows are much shorter, and then that local backup server should be connected to a cloud or an off-site location, right? We do a lot in the finance industry. A lot of banks and credit unions use us because they've got multiple sites. And so they'll have their data center here, they'll put their backup, a secondary backup server in another location, and they simply replicate. We just need to make sure that it's distant. Or you can leverage our cloud, you can leverage your Azure account. We're really flexible in where those backups are sent. And the backup, or the Carbonite Director, is actually the software that is running on that backup appliance. The only thing that we require on that backup appliance, it can be our appliance, it can be yours, but that backup appliance simply just needs to be running Windows 12, R2 or newer. So, but we can, we have agents that run on just about everything from just the standard Windows. We can protect Macs, we can protect HPUX, we do a ton with iSeries. Anybody here have iSeries anymore? No? Amazing how I still run into it. But from a deployment standpoint, again, very flexible. Because we're agent-based, we can put those agents wherever we want. For example, there's a lot of, I'll give you an example. I did a deal years ago with Quiznos, if you guys know this. I don't even know if Quiznos is around anymore, are they? Maybe. The sub shop. They were really going on hard times. Things weren't looking great. They were trying to cut costs, but they needed backup. And so we ended up going direct to cloud. They had all these little servers all over the country. We just put an agent on each one of their servers, backed it right up to our cloud. Okay, and they managed it from one central location. It took one guy to manage everything. The hybrid backup, again, I mentioned that you can use our server or yours as that local backup appliance. We actually have a solution or an option that if you want to add on that backup appliance, it's about an extra $400 a year. We'll send you whatever size appliance is appropriate for your needs. If you ever outgrow it, we'll replace it. If it ever fails, we'll replace it. We're a one-stop point of contact for support if any of that ever goes wrong. We see them fail very little because they're typically very robust, just made for, we're not focused on speed necessarily with these backup appliances. And then we can do a distributed environment as well. So, you can have backup appliances, satellite backup appliances, everything pointing to multiple locations. And again, it can include our cloud or yours. Very flexible in the way we can back up the servers. And there's a little bit on the kind of the path that things take. So we've got, your main systems up here. You've got your Carbonite appliance here backing up to the cloud. And then if we factor in our double take or our high availability software, you can actually replicate production environment while you're backing it up, replicate it over to a secondary target. Again, either in our cloud or into your environment. Most customers do their own environment. But we're not only backing it up, but then we're also replicating it so that we've got high availability, or we've got rapid recovery failover. This literally just takes a couple of minutes to get everything spun up and moved over. And we'll reroute all of your traffic to that disaster recovery site.
So question, for $400 a year, you supply the appliance for hybrid?
Yeah, about that. And that particular offering scales from 2 terabytes to 20 terabytes. So, there's that encompasses most of our mid-market customers. But yeah, so we'll, when you subscribe, we'll actually just ship you an appliance, ship you a server. It's normally a 1 to 2 U, rack mountable server. So depending on the size, if it's bigger, I think for the 20 terabyte customers, I think we scale it up to I want to say it's up to, I think it's a 3U, 36 terabyte capacity for the bigger customers. Yep. But yeah, multiple ways you can back up, so we can back up the file level. And again, it helps with the recovery. This is all about recovery, right? So we say we back up for the purpose of recovery. So we're backing up so that you can go in and recover individual files. You can do a full system state recovery. You can do the bare metal recovery. I actually had one of our resellers at a financial or at a credit union conference. They had an Exchange server. I don't know if I ever told you this. They had an Exchange server that they did a full bare metal recovery on. That was their demonstration. It took about 15 minutes. So works really slick. So this touches a little bit more on the rapid recovery, right? So if we're replicating, if you're using our replication tools, we will not only replicate, but we also do snapshotting. And so you can replicate back to a previous point in time if needed, in case you had some kind of a ransomware attack or a malicious attack. We can host your DR site in our cloud, or if you have a colo, or if you've got a second site or a second server, you want to keep that all self-contained, you can do that as well. That's, again, most customers do it that way. But yet we do have customers that come to us and say, hey, I don't want the cost of building a completely separate colo. What do you have? And we'll do that for you. So I think I've already covered most of the stuff here on the high availability, full server protection. This Carbonite Recover is what we call our cloud failover. Okay, so server migration. How do you guys do migrations today? When do you need to do migrations? Do you find that happening very often? You get a new server? Yeah. Sometimes I get people switching from Hyper-V to VMware or vice versa. There's a lot of different reasons. Sometimes you're moving sites, right? I mean, we get some companies that everyone's trying to move to the cloud. And then we have other companies that are all trying to move out of the cloud. So there's lots of ways we want to try and do migrations. And these come up from time to time, and it's not always a really easy process, right? Especially, let's say you've got SQL running, and it's a point of sale server, and you can't have any interruption. How are you going to do this? So we actually use our replication agent for it. This is a really low-cost one-time use license that you buy. We typically sell it in 5 packs. You buy a 5-pack, let's say you use 2, the other 3 remain active until you use them, just indefinitely. But what happens is we replicate everything from the operating system. You can do just files if you want, but we can do the whole system as well. We replicate that over to the target server. And then when you're ready, they're typically 60-day licenses, so you've got plenty of time to replicate the data over. Once that replication is in sync and everything's at 100%, then you can just kind of let it stay in synchronization until you're ready to cut over. And then it literally is just the punch of a button, and it reroutes all the traffic over the new servers.
It doesn't matter what operating system's on the server?
So with this, we typically, this is for Windows or Linux OSs. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what version of Windows you're running, what server version?
For the most part, it's really flexible. So if you've got anything that's older or outdated, we probably want to double check against.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. But we've been doing this for so long, right? A lot of times we have the old agents and the old license, the old versions that will support those older systems. So take a look at it and see. Now, we also have some customers that say, hey, we just don't have time, we don't have the manpower or whatever to do this on our own. So we do have a migration as a service as an option. It eliminates the need to buy a license. You simply pay for the service, and then we've got people, that's what they do, and that's what they've done for years and years and years. They'll help you with the migration. And we've done migrations for, everything from just, small mom and pop shops to the Department of Defense. I mean, we do these all day, every day, all day long. No, there's the support. I didn't realize we had some more detailed slides in there. Yeah, so this actually is a great diagram that kind of illustrates the power of the migration product. Now, keep in mind, this is the exact same way our high availability product works. The migration product is just a single-use license. So we can replicate from cloud to ground, physical to virtual. Kind of what we say is anywhere to anywhere, if you're doing migration or replication. Any questions on that piece? There's so much to talk about on it. I know I'm just like 30,000 foot level, but okay, if there's no questions, yep, there's some scenarios right there, right? So another area that we're seeing the migration take place is with SQL. With the with the end of life of SQL 2008, people were saying, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to get off this? You can use our migration license to actually upgrade to the newer versions. Most people are going to 2016 from what I can see. So if you decide that you do want to take advantage of our migration as a service, this is kind of a flow chart of the way it goes through. So you're going to work with a project manager that will, again, if it's just a couple of servers, it's not that big a deal. They're going to be able to do it very quickly. But we do have big migrations that we do where, it really is an elaborate, drawn out process. To kind of put it in perspective too, the efficiency of this migration, I know I was talking to the manager of our professional services team. He was involved in a large migration project with the Department of Defense over in Guam. This was several years ago. And they had like 1,500 servers or something that they were migrating. He said that they had a window of 15 minutes. If the server was going to be down longer than 15 minutes, they had to publicly notify all of the users. In all of those migrations they did, they never once had to send out a notification. And then let's wrap it up with the endpoint protection piece. So there again, this really goes hand in hand with the Webroot side. So if we're protecting your endpoints with antivirus, we want to have a way to be able to protect the data so that not only does it meet compliance requirements, but that it's recoverable as well. And so we have a backup agent that we can put on the endpoints. This is one of my favorite products because it does more than just back it up. Typically it points to our cloud, but I have, in fact, I've got one large nonprofit that just bought last year. They started with 500 endpoints. They ended up adding, they just keep adding more and more. They're now up to 3,700 endpoints. And in their particular use case, they have a lot of people that are out doing fundraising on a national level, and they have to be able to have a legal hold on the data that pertains to their efforts. So not only do we back up, but we have the ability to put a legal hold on that data so that the user doesn't know about it. So the user is just doing their thing. Maybe they think they've gone in and, let's say you can turn on or off their access to the cloud vault. Let's say they have access to the cloud vault and they think that they've deleted all their data. Well, they haven't because we've got legal hold on there. We use this a lot with executives, especially that mid to high level management. Sometimes when they leave, it's not always on the best of terms, and they'll just go in and just delete everything that they've done. And it may not even be malicious, but sometimes it's just to kind of protect themselves. I don't know what their reasoning is. I'm sure there's 1,000 reasons, right? But sometimes the data that these folks delete is really important to the company. And so this is a way to protect the company, protect the data, to make sure that it never goes away. So we've got the backup features, we've got the hold features. Now we also have the ability to track computers. So my admins can go in at any time and see that my computer was connected. In the last ISP address was at the Fairfield over here, right? So they can track where I've been, where I've used it, how I've used it. Now some companies hate that. So you can turn that on or off, right? But it is a feature that's available, especially if you're concerned. We had one construction company over in Dallas that really wanted that. And then they wanted the next feature as well, which is the ability to do a poison pill or a remote wipe. So it was a construction company over in Dallas that their trucks kept getting targeted by thieves who knew that the company had company laptops installed in their trucks. And so they were doing other things to try and prevent the attacks, but they were also, it's an asset management tool. So not only was the data being backed up, but also the computers, we were able to lock those computers down and remotely wipe the data. And that poison pill can work one of two ways. You can either proactively just send it out, and once the computer is turned on and it gets an internet connection, it will get the signal and it will delete anything that's being backed up. That typically isn't my preferred way, because in order for that to happen, whoever's stolen the computer has to have broken into it, right? And it has to be connected. So you can also do a reverse poison pill, which is basically a countdown timer. So if the computer, for example, doesn't connect to the internet within, say, 2 weeks, it'll do an automatic deletion, or a month, or whatever you determine. And again, all of this is managed from one single console. And then if you've got a big organization that has multiple levels of admins, then you can go ahead and determine who has access to what. So there again, this deployment can, or the endpoint piece can be deployed, locally into someone's own environment. They can leverage our cloud. They can leverage Azure. It really can be deployed a variety of ways. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Do we have any other questions? Is there anything else that we need to cover?
I think that's it.
Cool.
I think we've hit the top of the hour.
I wanted to finish 10 minutes, so I apologize. But we'll be around. The question.
I would like to ask back a little bit with Webroot. You're talking about the system, the Webroot monitoring file changes, rolling back.
Mm-hmm.
So where is that Delta data being stored? I mean, you said it's a low resource consumption,
Yeah.
but that data, those changes have got to be being stored somewhere. And how far back will it go on its own automatically?
Those are some really good questions. My understanding is that it's locally. I don't know if you know more information than
I
I do.
don't know.
Unfortunately, because the Webroot acquisition is new, I don't know that detail.
Right.
But if you're interested, give me your card. I'd be happy to schedule a call with an engineer.
No,
And
it's not that big a deal. Just
right.
My
My understanding is that it's all just maintained there by the agent on the computer locally. That none of that data is being sent to the
Yeah, I
cloud.
would expect that.
But my understanding is also that those changes are typically identified as hostile rather quickly. So I don't think we're talking about large caches of changes being documented before it determines eventually that it's safe. Because the goal is to, as quickly as possible, determine whether it's malicious or not. And if it's determined as safe, then it will walk away from that logging. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
It's just, if I'm lying, it's got to monitor every file's change before it can witness or
So-
recognize that it may be malicious. So every file's getting changed, it's got to be keeping snapshots of it.
It only
I don't know,
monitors
Log
it,
down we zero it.
it only monitors those file changes that are deemed as questionable. So if a file, let's say Word, and there's Word changes, if those have already been deemed as safe, it's not going to keep track of all of those changes.
Yeah.
Yep. Just if you click on something and it opens up and it doesn't know what it is, then it's going to start logging it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
You would think when it
So-
starts attacking the registry or something, to start
Right.
logging that. I mean, if you're opening a Word document, I can't see it going after that. It's already deemed that, my resume document's fine. You know what I mean? I would think
Yeah.
when it starts to hit registry file, when it starts to look like it's doing something it's not supposed to, I would
Yeah.
think that's when it kicks in and starts tracking and remembering those previous settings. So that if it deems it as hostile, it can go back and reset those registries. Because that's the only area you're really concerned about is if they're matching the registry.
It's all AI and it's all built around trying to detect threats.
Right, if it's attacking your browser,
Right. And that's what happened with my wife. I mean, it completely hijacked my wife's Mac. Every time she went into her browser, and she is a contractor with the state of Utah and works with very highly sensitive health information for her clients. And she was just afraid to go in. She just didn't trust her browser. But yet she needed to go in and log data into the state systems. She didn't know it was being recorded. So, all right. Well, we're going to stick around. So if you guys have any other questions, let us know. If you are interested in continuing a conversation with an engineer to learn more, to see how any of this would fit into your environment, just talk to Mike here, and he can schedule those calls. I probably won't be on those. It'll be Craig and probably Braxton. Braxton, my counterpart, who sits in Salt Lake and is getting snowed on today. So, all right. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen.